Welcome to Talking Science Africa, a place where we hold conversations with scientists and researchers in the science space to explain to us the work that they are doing in a common man's language so that we can understand how it's very important for our lives. Today we are pleased to host Professor Donald Kugonza. Professor Donald Kugonza is the head of Department of Animal and Reg Sciences at Makerere University's College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. Professor, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving us opportunity to talk to the world. It doesn't come every day, once in so many months, and we are grateful that we can talk to the world and express, I think, some of the world views that can help improve livelihoods, improve life in general. That's what I think we want. We want a better world, a better planet, a better continent, better country, better village, better community.
Start of this conversation, what do you research about?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I do my research, in animal sciences, mainly in the understanding of the animals that we keep. I have a passion for the livestock species or the animal species that we keep in our households. Chickens, goats, cattle, understanding the diversity of these animals, what differences do they have, and why are there those differences? And so how can we make them better to produce the products that people want? Everybody wants some kind of animal food in their diet, okay? So how do we make sure that everybody can access that? Some milk, some meat, some eggs, and some people even want to have animals for fun. So how do we meet these needs? Is really of my interest. So I'm always interested in the dynamics, the genetics of it, and the improvement, the productivity improvement. How do you get it bigger or smaller, if that is the interest? How do you get it better looking? How do you get it more accessible? Yeah.
Awesome. So the reason why I looked for you for an interview, because I read 2 papers in Nature journals, where you were among the co-authors. They are really good, amazing papers on genes of cattle
Across the world.
And I said, wow. I knew nothing about genes, cattle genes, and I said, now it's an opportunity for me to interview someone, and so that I can learn, but also my audience can learn on these subjects. So the first question would be, I grew up in Western Uganda. My grandfather has cows, neighbors have cows. I have traveled across Uganda, northern Uganda, eastern Uganda. You see different
types of animals,
different types of cows.
So short ones,
yes,
tall ones, big ones.
Yes,
so there is this big diversity.
Yes, that diversity. So if I ask you, what's the genetic composition of these cows that we have in Uganda, and how does it differ? How does it shape their size and their horns and etc.?
Okay. Yeah, so Uganda is an interesting country. It's a blessed country in a way that we have this big diversity. So talking about cattle particularly, we have 2 main groups. So we have the ones which have short horns, sometimes they are darkish. They will tend to have a big hump. They have these big ears. They have a big dewlap. So we call those Zebu animals. Typically in northern Uganda, eastern Uganda, So they will not be very big, but they have features which stand out. The dewlap, the hump at the back. The horns are a bit short, sometimes pointed. And then we have on the other side a very different type of animal. Tall, big, white, very, very prominent horns. We call them the Ankole cattle. So the Ankole, the Sanga cattle, and their associates. The associated cattle. We have the Nyambo, and then we have the Ntuku, the Bashi, these are all in the same group. So those Ankole, call them the Sanga, and then the East African Zebu, they are the biggest. And then at the crossroads, in Uganda, in Bunyoro, we have a mix there. So we have what we call the Nganda, we have the Nyoro, yeah? And then we have a bit of Kyoga, Lugware. So those will be the ones which are at the boundary of these two big populations. So in general, yes, Uganda is blessed. We have this whole diversity, so we have the unique species. And at the genetic level, or you say at molecular level, they're not very, very different.
So, if they are not different, why is it that some of them
look different?
Are
physically.
big, others are small, some have horns, some don't have horns.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So, obviously they are different. First of all, physically, when we see them. But also at a molecular level, yes, they differ. Because what has happened is that when the cow was first domesticated, when people started keeping cows, many years ago, we put it to around 7,000 years ago, 8,000 years ago. That's when people started keeping cows. And we know that in Africa, there was a center of domestication. So cattle have been domesticated in two places. One, in the Middle East, say around Mesopotamia, but then the other one is in Northern Africa. So these centers of domestication is where man starts staying with animals, these cows. So we believe they are not very different initially. But because everybody who picked these animals became interested in certain things. Some people became interested in more milk. Yeah? Some people become interested in bigger sizes. So you find cows which produce 50 liters of milk in one day. Others produce 90 liters of milk. There are Frisians which can produce, the world record holder now is producing 92 liters per day of 305 days. This is big. But then for us, ours don't produce that much. Ankole cattle produce maybe up to 4 liters. But then in terms of horns, Ankole cattle have the best horns in the world. Long. I've studied those horns. There are cows which have horns of up to 2.5 meters, end to end. And then the Zebus, they have the biggest sizes. Animals can grow up 900 kilos. The Borans, or the Karamojong cattle of Uganda are in that same family. They're in the Zebu group, the Karamojong. We call them the largest African Zebus. So the reason why there is all this difference, we are different. So different communities, the Banyankore, the Bahima, wanted an animal that looks the way it looks. The color, the horns, while the Karamojong don't like black animals. They like white animals. And so they selected. And even we're going to go to even other species. You find certain communities like white goats, others want black goats. So this diversity in interest, and obviously you said you grew up seeing these animals. People want an animal that is complete, which gives some milk, it has some meat. You can get a young male and slaughter it from it. They can give it out as dowry. So it must serve all these functions, and that's the reason why there is all this diversity. Once you lose interest in all these purposes or these roles or these uses, then there are things you don't need in an animal. Color doesn't become important. So you begin doing away with color. You start doing away with horns. That's why the European cows don't have horns. They don't recognize them. Yeah, so sorry, it takes time, but I'm trying to explain that there is a need for this variation. We call it variation. Tall, small, this color, that color, so many colors. It looks like a Christmas tree because we have different interests. I will sort of take to another species. Even in chickens, they will tell you the red rujumba are for that purpose. The white ones are for that purpose. So if you have one color, how do you meet those purposes?
So, cows were first domesticated in North Africa.
Yes, the African domestication.
The African domestication.
Yes.
But people here, when they look at Ankole cow, they say this Ankole cow is indigenous
To Uganda.
To Great Lakes region.
Yes. So,
how did it move from North Africa?
Okay, so quite interesting. So, when these animals were domesticated, wherever they were domesticated, so people begin moving. So people begin moving like from the Asian subcontinent. The Zebus actually are Asian in origin. They came here through the Indian Ocean. They came by boats, those doors. Some of them came through the land route. If you go through Arabia, through Yemen, through Egypt, there. Some of them came through the land route. Now, when most of these animals reached here, they didn't remain in one place. They begin moving. So these entries, as I've mentioned, came from up. So they begin moving down. So the real movement route of the cattle is from the north coming down. And as they came down, people will settle. So people first settled. They came from the Ethiopian highlands. They came and settled here. At least we know that's how most of the Sangas came. They came here. And then some people settled here. We know Sanga in Ankole, as you go into Mbarara. That place is one of the first points of where the Ankole first began taking shape. So whichever animals reached there were maybe not very, very unique. But the people then picked interest in those things which make the Ankole. If you continued south into the other Sanga, the Shonas, the Tuli, the Zimbabwe, you go to the Nguni in South Africa, they look different because those people began picking interest in other things. Actually, the Nguni are very black, the Nguni cattle. Among the Ankole, chozi is not a favored color, yeah. So that is the route, how they came not necessarily following the Nile Valley, but that's the general movement from Egypt, Abyssinia, Ethiopia. They come down. But also, at the beginning of this century, there was a very big outbreak of disease, rinderpest and other diseases. They almost wiped out all the cattle. So you can say the cattle we have here are a mix of what came in earlier, but also what is recent. Yeah.
So the Ankole cow
is Ugandan. Is Ugandan. It has been made in Uganda, but the original animals came from somewhere. I mean, just like the Ugandans, you came from, from the Cameroon Highlands. We came, the Bantu. They came from somewhere, but you are Ugandan.
We are now Ugandan.
We are Ugandan. We have been here long enough.
So the Ankole cow is also...
Is Ugandan. It was made here. And that's why whoever needs an Ankole has to come in this region, Great Lakes. Because we are the ones who picked out the animals that make this animal. And everybody ignored them, so we are the ones who have them.
So if you examine the genes of an Ankole cow, the long-horned cow, what's its composition?
Okay.
Is it more European? Is it more North African? Is it more Asian? How is it?
Very good question. So the Ankole are very interesting. But as I've told you, the Zebu are both indicas. They are completely Asian. The Ankole, we call them actually an African. It's surprising. Ankole is an African taurine. Taurus is supposed to be the European, Bos taurus. But the Ankole is Bos taurus, Africanus. So it is an African taurine. In other words, if you allow, it's an African Muzungu of sorts. Yes. So that's why they don't have the typical big hump. What do you call the hump? The hump. So they don't have that. They don't have this big dewlap, which is typical of the Zebu. Yeah. So the Ankole is a Bos indicus, but with a taurine line. So the Y genes, the Y, you see, every individual is made of the X and Y. So the Y in the Ankole is Taurus. It's not indice. It's not indicus. It's not of the Zebu. It is of the Taurus line. Yeah. So that's it.
What are some of the genetic traits of the Uganda's indigenous cattle that an ordinary farmer may not understand or appreciate?
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for this question. So, today, most people think about milk. How much milk, how much meat. But there are a lot of traits, and in these papers you are referring to, we're interested in adaptation. What is the ability of this animal here today, tomorrow, and in future? These animals which have come from elsewhere, you can say they're artificially here. You must treat them every day. You must give them a house. You must sing for them. There are things you must do. They just won't eat anything. So the problem is our cows have these unique genes about adaptation. They can walk a long distance and not show a problem. Yeah. So they can go without water for some time. They can eat poor quality feed. These grasses which are very, very high in lignin. If you give them Zungu cattle that, they hardly can survive. The Frisians, the Jerseys. So some of these things are not very important to farmers. They are thinking about milk and meat. Until when the drought becomes too much, until when there is no more grass. Then they have to go and cut things, until when there is an outbreak of disease. Then others are dying and these ones are surviving. I'll tell you a story. There is this gentleman from Remikoma. He told me they encouraged him to sell off his local animals and buy Frisians. So he sold off almost half of his herd. Then when they began falling sick, those Frisians he got, he would call the vet. The vet takes 3 days to come. So his animals begin dying. They begin dying, and he told me, if I had not saved some of my indigenous, I would now be a very poor man. So he had the means to get the exotics, but he didn't have the means to maintain those exotics. You must have a vet nearby, you must have the drugs. Sometimes the vet comes and says, oh, but this drug, I don't have it. I'll have to go to Liantonde and get it. So the animal is not going to wait, it's going to die. So these are those genes or those traits in indigenous animals. We needed them yesterday, we need them today, we are going to need them tomorrow. The genes for adaptation towards a difficult environment, the genes that are able to be resilient to diseases, and diseases which have been there, tick-borne diseases, but also diseases which are going to come in the future. The diseases we don't know which are going to come. We don't know. There are over 80 new diseases. I'm not a prophet of doom. There are 80 new diseases since 1960, whether human or animal. Ebola, Marburg, SARS-CoV, COVID, they are new diseases. They are not there. Bird flu, they are not there. Mad cow disease. So over 60 diseases. So there are diseases which are going to come. So if we don't keep the diversity of our animals, of our cattle, a time is going to come when we have an animal which can't survive. So
That's true.
we need to keep that in balance. So when farmers demand more milk, more meat, and so on, more eggs, more that, there is a market drive, but then the environment, climate change is here, it is becoming hotter. Are we going to have an animal which can survive in the degrees of 30 degrees for 6 months continuous? You don't have an animal which can survive. People have to find something else to eat. They have to give up some products.
We have to lose one of them.
Yeah.
So we have indigenous cattle and the
Exotics.
these exotic breeds, but we have seen crossbreeding.
Rampant crossbreeding.
What do we get out of that crossbreeding? How strong is that cow?
So this is what I would say. If you talk to an average farmer, on the road there, you meet a farmer, and what kind of animal do you want to keep? They will tell you, if I can use the local language here, njagala maleto. So there is this shift. They want an animal, they want a cow that is a cross. Maleto means almost 50-50. So I want the good genes. I want some more milk. I want an animal which is growing faster. But I don't want it to be too fragile that it cannot survive. But so crossbreeding is good, like 50%. 50 indigenous, 50 exotic. Now what is actually happening is that when somebody crosses and gets 50-50, the next time they call an inseminator. They get an inseminator, they add more exotic. The next time you get more exotic. So they are becoming 100%, and now they cannot cope. But part of the problem is, it's our problem. We have not helped the farmer to keep the maleto. When a farmer does a 50-50, that cross, the next time somebody should come with cross semen from a crossbred, not a pure. We are not doing our job as government, you can say, because we are the ones who are producing this material. So we are supposed to keep in our semen banks, in our gene bank, we should keep crosses. So that when a farmer says, I want more milk, we are bringing cross material, are not pure. So we are not changing their local into a mzungu. We want to keep a cross. So your question asking, why the cross? Because we need more products. We cannot just wish them away. The market is there. People are going to ask for more milk. They're asking for more eggs. So we want to come some kind of balance. But we must keep the pure indigenous. To have a cross, to make a cross, you need the pure indigenous and the Christ. So, but now the farmer wants an animal that is producing a cross. So we need the indigenous and exotic, and then that mix.
So when I do crossbreeding, I have the indigenous and the exotic breed. Do you get 50-50?
Yes, at the beginning, if you bring 100% Ankole, 100% Frisian. If you get semen from Frisian, it's 100%. And a cow, Ankole, is 100%. When you cross, you get 50. Now, the next time you bring Frisian and you put it there, it jumps from 50 to 75. If again you bring Frisian, it jumps to 87. Within 4 generations, you are reaching 92%. So it's shocking. In 10 years, if you do it continuously, the Ankole is gone, the Uganda is gone, the Nyoro is gone, the Karamojongo is gone. And now all the Uganda, people are taking these Frisians everywhere. You go to Karamoja in Laro sub-county, they are there. Loro. You go in Karita, they are there. It is a semi-desert. But how somebody took these exotic animals there? So it's good you're asking these questions. We need to, I went to Ngoni land and they are feeding cotton seed to cows. For 2 months, there is no grass. They can only get some cotton seed. Now, you give cotton to a Frisian or a Jazzy or a Ganzi or Aishire. They can't manage. They will just die.
They cannot. So indigenous cows are very important, as you have said.
Yeah.
If we don't protect them, given the changing environment, how will it be in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
10, 20, 30 years. It could become better. It could become very bad. So if there is no deliberate effort to conserve, if there is no deliberate effort to promote, and it's very good you're doing this program, I hope one of the outcomes is people will become enlightened. Oh, these people spend time to just talk about indigenous animals, So if there is awareness created and the interest, then there is every reason that we are going to preserve our species. If nothing is done, I'm not a prophet of doom, but 30 years you are giving is a long time. These animals, I've already shown you, in 10 years, let's say even 15 years, because if you get a 2.5-year-old, you inseminate it, it drops in another 1 year. So in another 15 years, if there is no concerted effort, then the breeds are going to disappear. So if the 30 years, we keep asking this question about trends. Do you feel the animals are increasing, they are reducing, or they are stable? And some people will tell you it is stable. It is stable. It is stable because we are still seeing some around. But we can't guarantee. There has to be a deliberate effort. And thank you very much for this program. It's one of the efforts to preserve. Yeah. Otherwise, there is a big worry.
Looking beyond Uganda, you talked about the two major
introductions,
the
domestication events.
Yeah, you talked about the domestication events, but the 2 major types
of cattle in Uganda.
We have in Uganda. Looking at the African continent, how many types of cattle do we have?
So going across Africa, we still have these big groups. So I mentioned we have the Sanga group. So the Sanga will be the Ankole group. That group has almost 12 breeds. So it has the Ankole, I mentioned it has the Shona in Zimbabwe, it has the Tuli, then it has the Ngoni, then it has the Sheko in Ethiopia. So there is that group. And then we have the Zebu group, the Boran, the Small East African, the Karamojong, the Butana, Kenana in Sudan, they go all the way. Even in Egypt, we have the Asi, we in Somaliland. And then in West Africa, they also have a certain type of Zebu there, the Ndama is a West African cattle, very tripa-tolerant. It tolerates sesaflies. It doesn't fall sick from those diseases of sesaflies. So these are the major groups you can say in Africa. We have the Sanga group, then we have the Zebu group, okay? But obviously the kind of subcluster regionally. So you have the Kenya and the Horn of Africa. Then we have the Ugandan, Rwanda, Tanzania, Congo, DRC subgroup. Then you have the Southern Africa group. And then you have the West African group, Cameroon through Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, that Sahel region. They have their own cattle. They have some very unique animals. In Chad, they have a very unique animal. There are short horns, big, as big as that at the base. But the length is this short. They will be like buffalo, but a bit different. So that's another group. It's at the border of the Zebus, so the North African Zebus and the West African Shorthorns. So basically in Africa we have the two groups. We have the Taurus, the African Taurus, which I call the Sanga largely, and then we have the Indicas, the Zebus, the big humped ones, Shorthorns. Some people call them the small, they call them the goats which look like, the cows which look like goats. If you go to Paris, Bukedi, the Nkedi, they are small animals, but I like them. These animals drop a calf every year. They are really nice. But the people from your place say, those are not cows.
So, the African cattle, what makes it genetically unique compared to cattle in Europe, in Asia, in America?
Okay. So in one of the studies, we're interested in knowing. So they are what we call signatures of selection. So signatures of selection, we try to trace what is unique in these animals here that people have been selecting for. Because what are those signatures, those genes that people have been selecting for here that they don't select for in other places? So that's why we find they select for genes of resilience, ability to stand disease. That's why animals, and you could also say, if we checked in human beings, we also have those genes. We can have parasites in the blood, but we are not sick, because our bodies have got that ability to hold the parasite without falling sick. So the cows also have that. We have been selecting them over years, either naturally or artificially. The selection is both by nature. So the disease hits the animals, but they're not falling sick. So our animals are unique in those ways, because of those selection signatures for disease, resilience, adaptation to the environment. Hot climates. Our animals walk in the hot climates and they don't seem bothered. When you see the Frisians walk and then they run for the tree, if you see Frisians, the way they graze at night or very early in the morning, at around this time they all run under the shade. The local animals walk all the time, isn't it? So at genetic level, that is where our animals are different. And actually, when you pick blood and you go into the lab, you actually see that. Obviously, you see in some places, there's adaptation towards cold. Like we've seen animals which come from the mountainous areas, they have signatures for tolerance towards cold. But the major two are really tolerance towards disease, tolerance towards difficult weather conditions. Hot weather, a lot of rain, a lot of water, standing in the mud, things which certain animals from some places cannot tolerate.
Are we sure that the given the genetic traits of the African cow, are they going to survive hotter environments? What have you found from your study?
So what we are seeing is not yet very, very clear, because the changes that have occurred in temperature are not that big to give us a very good picture. Okay? What we have been able to do, for example, for chickens, is to put them in a container and raise the temperature and see how they are behaving. We are not yet able to do that with cows because they are so big. But one of the things which you could do is to predict and see at 35 degrees, what is the chance that animals are going to continue be walking or drinking or grazing. So this is the general understanding, that if the climate continues changing, becomes hotter, fewer rains, weeks, some breeds are going to disappear. There is no question. Some breeds are going to disappear. So we shall end up with fewer breeds and fewer animals. The animals are going to reduce if climate continues changing, unless we do something. So in the desert countries, they have created these artificial environments where animals can stay in a tent and they have AC, they have fans, big fans running. How do they say, what is the economics of doing that? If you're going to keep spraying water and keep blowing cold air into the rooms where these animals are, aren't you better off importing the milk? You want to produce milk because you must produce.
Yeah. Is it even affordable?
Yes, so that's the problem. We don't want to go into that. So we need to do something, preserve our environment, make sure, we keep the trees. It's getting hotter, so we need to proactively improve the environment for animals. Otherwise, you have to find something else to eat. The animals will disappear. And not only animals, even other organisms, bees will disappear. Cows will disappear. People say, okay, if cows die, we shall eat goats. But what is the guarantee? What guarantee do you have?
That guarantee that goats will survive.
Yeah.
So when I'm reading things to do with cows in South Africa, the Ankole cow is always mentioned, and we know that the South African president came here, took them, and some other people have also taken them. It's a big thing. Someone can trade it for.
They've taken them to Hollywood, I can say.
Yeah.
They are worth so much money.
Yes, they are selling them at
big amounts. The auction, the prices at which they are auctioning these bulls, it's unbelievable. And I think.
Why are they popular in South Africa?
I think that we had not seen the beauty of these animals. We had not seen the goodness in these animals. We took them for granted. So when they went into their environments there, they see the way they are performing, the way they are growing with very minimal input. I think this is the excitement. These animals will grow, will give you milk with very little input. And that is the excitement that comes with it. They give you good quality meat that we all know has all these high meat quality attributes, low cholesterol, very good marbling, very good, fat marbling in the meat muscles. So these animals have been very well accepted there. And I think it's because we took them for granted. We never gave them the price. So when we hear the prices at which they are selling them there, it seems to be unbelievable. But why would somebody pay so much for something if they are not of that value? So they are valuable. And I think it's a good lesson for us now. We can maybe manage them better. People were doing away with them, crossing them with others. Now they can appreciate, our animals, maybe we can earn so much from them. Personally, what I think, we need to put a price to the meat that comes from these animals. Why should meat from a Frisian cost the same as meat from an Ankole? It shouldn't. One should cost 20,000, one should cost maybe 30,000. It shouldn't cost the same. Why should meat from an animal which is 5 years old cost the same as the meat from 2-year-old? So so about the breeds, meat from an Ankole should cost different because it's a different product. And that is the reason why we should be able to preserve. If there is a price attached to the product, you see, what the South Africans are doing, they are starting to label the meat in the supermarkets. The Ankole meat. We don't know that.
It's more expensive.
Yes, it is. It should cost different.
I have also seen that, I think, in Asian countries, I think Europe, meat is sold
By breed.
by breed, and the prices are very different.
Yeah.
We are
Actually,
still taking it for granted here.
meat is sold by breed. Meat is sold by production system. If it is an animal is raised on grass, it costs different from an animal which is in a feedlot. Even eggs, chickens which are raised in a battery cage system, now the battery cage system in Europe has been demonized. You grow your chickens in those cages here; they are very popular. Grow chickens in cages, people hesitate to buy those eggs in the supermarket. They want the chickens from the system or the range. So there is that change. And so we need to move. It's part of the traceability system. We need to attribute, what system produced this meat, this milk. And so we put a price to those production systems that are progressive, that are beneficial to other systems, to the environment, for instance. Yeah. So we need to take that direction. And I think we are learning now from the Asians. You are saying some of the most expensive meats, it is certain breeds, it's produced in certain ways. So we need to do that. I know somebody is going to say, no, meat is meat. It's not. Milk is milk. No, it's not. Eggs are eggs. No, they are not.
No, not at all.
And even that is already changing. People are now becoming aware. I would rather eat the white shelled egg from the local chicken at 500 shillings than buy a layer egg at 100 shillings, 200 shillings. So the awareness is shifted.
I'm thinking about this scenario of a very strong indigenous African cow that is perhaps much more pilot thing. So if I pick this cow and take to Europe or to Asia or to North America, can it survive there? Can it perform that?
Interestingly, there is an animal called the Ankole Watusi. It was actually taken to Texas. And it has, when it went there, they came up with the horns which are shaped like this. Very, very, lyre shape. And so the Ankole Watusi is there in Texas. It is becoming a Texas longhorn. So they can. There are places in America which are also subtropical. They are hot, and so the animals can actually survive there. They will not go to snow areas, no, they will not survive. So that's the other thing. If we don't look after the animals well here, they are going to disappear. And then we shall either buy them from the South Africans or from the Texans. Yeah, so we know the Indian cattle, the gyr, were taken to South America, to Brazil. And now, the world record milk producer is an animal called the Girlando. It's actually originated from India. It was taken to South America. It found a new environment, and it's doing very well. In Australia, they have what they call the Australian milking Zebu. They actually took Zebus from Africa and Asia, and probably added in something, maybe jazz. And the Australian milking Zebu is doing very well in Australia. So maybe it's not a very bad thing for other countries to take animals from us. They can go, work with them, play with them, and then they can come back in another form and still benefit us. So it's part of giving back. But I think we shouldn't wait for the rest of the world to take our animals, improve them, and bring them. We need to maintain them, continuously improve them, even here. So we need the dual pathway.
Let's turn to the genomic database that researchers have been working on.
Yeah.
What have you been? What
have we got?
What is this genomic database, and what do you have there?
So what has happened is that we had this challenge that every time you want to do this kind of work, you go and pick 10 samples, you run to the lab, you analyze them, write a story, and close it down. So we came up with this consortium. We call it the OptiBov consortium. Optimization of bovine. Optimization bovine. So we wanted to look at certain cattle along a certain line from the North Pole, if you go to the South Pole. So we drew a line from Finland, Netherlands, Portugal, Egypt, Uganda, South Africa. So in Africa, we looked at the three countries which are on the extremes. The one in the center at the equator, Uganda. We looked at the one down, South Africa, and then Egypt. Then in Europe, we also looked at Southern Europe, Portugal. We looked at Central Europe, Netherlands. Then we looked at Northern Europe, Finland. So the idea has been, what is in the genomes of these animals? What makes the genomes of these animals? So we get the blood of these animals, get the DNA, and we go and sequence all the genes. And what we are finding is quite interesting. So we've looked at like the milk genes. Yeah, that's the most recent paper on the milk variants. We looked at the meat formation genes. We've looked at adaptation genes. So adaptation to cold, adaptation to heat, adaptation to disease, different diseases, intestinal worm, but also ectoparasites, resistance towards ticks, like in eastern Uganda, there are these bukebi, cattle, benketi. These animals, you look at them, they don't have ticks on them.
So the most interesting thing about the interview before you, I interviewed the principal investigator of the Uganda antique vaccine.
Yes.
And we were talking about these ticks as a challenge and how do you deal with them. So we have this database. You have already picked out some information and analyzed some aspects of it. What else are you going to analyze, and so what should we expect?
So one of the, what I call the big things, is to be able to tell all the genes in a Ugandan cow. So for the first time, we have this initiative where we went to Rushere. We said, let's pick one breed in Uganda, which represents the country. And then we picked out, let's look for one animal. And that animal, we are going to understand all the genes that are in that animal. So we picked out an animal called the Ruvarasi. It is from Rushere, the farm of Mr. Tayebwa Emmanuel. We are very proud of you, Mr. Tayebwa. Thank you so much. You believed in this work when we first talked to you, and the government of Uganda put money. So the idea is to go and sequence the genetic makeup of this bull. So it will be the first, we call it the first reference cattle genome. So we are creating a database of the genes that make the Ankole cow, or the Ankole cattle. And we are doing that first with this Ruvaras bull from Taiwan's farm, Mr. Taiwan's farm. And that database is going to be very informative, because when we know all the genes that are in the cow, I mean, they are reference genomes from other breeds, these European breeds. But this, as you have already said, genes depend also on where you are. These breeds have been there. They are different from ours. Okay? So we wanted to know what is in the genome of the Ankole, what is in the genome of the Zebu. When we have this, then anybody who wants to do work, if you want to understand the genes that affect ability to contract a disease, we shall go there and dig up and see. Is there a relationship? So these animals which fall sick of Nagana, do they have a different sequence from the ones which don't fall sick? Once we have this database, it is easy. The animals which fall sick from, tick-borne diseases, maybe bites from East Coast fever, how different are they? So once we have this information, then we can use it for many other things. Yeah, so still, obviously, Egyptians were interested in adaptation towards desert conditions. Unfortunately for them, what we have found out, they lost all the indigenous animals. You won't believe it. There is almost nothing indigenous in Egypt.
And domestication started outside.
Yes, but they have lost it because I think they are closer to Europe. All the animals are all mixed up. The South Africans have been more careful, because the South Africans, very early on, and this is something we have to learn from them, they created what they call breed societies. They have a society of Afrikaner. They have a society for Nguni. They have a society for Bonsmara. They have a society. So there is a society of farmers who keep each breed. So these guys are registered. They have their animals registered in a handbook. They have these study books. So you see, when we buy, Ugandans buy animals from there. You go to the farmers group, the registered farmers group. That's where you buy from. So because they keep these registers, and it's therefore possible to maintain. And so the two extremes, Egypt, everything is mixed up. South Africa, you have all these breeds for cattle, for goats, for sheep. And so we are proud of them. We pick Dopa sheep, we pick Bonsmaras, we pick Afrikanders, we pick all these unique breeds they have. Now they have pig breeds, the PIC group. So we can learn from the South Africans. Have breed societies which are strong, registered, and operational. If Uganda can learn something, we need those breed societies so that we can maintain our breeds. We need a breed society for Uganda, which is disappearing. We need a breed society for Ankole. We need a breed society for Amovende goats. We need a breed society for the Zebu, the Nkedi. The Nkedi were promised as a dairy breed for Uganda. We need a group of people who think very nicely about these animals and can preserve them. If there is one breed that we must preserve in Uganda today, it is the Nganda. If I tell you the only pure Nganda remaining in Uganda, the Nkamenyamigo. We did a study in part of this work. We found out that the only pure Nganda are in a farm, a government farm. All the others have been deleted. It's a shock. We went to Kayunga, we're in Chiringente here, in Fiji. We went to Masaka, we're in Nkozi area. That's one of the fulcrum. Then we went to Luengo. It's all deleted.
So that means that an indigenous breed can easily disappear?
Yes, it can. The Nganda is going. You are asking me in 10, 15 years what will happen. The Nganda, which is from Buganda here, is disappearing. Something has to be done. And I'm grateful to Naro. When we gave them this news, they woke up. They were like, is it? So they are becoming proactive. And we said, engage the farmers. You are keeping the pure. The farmers, it has disappeared. Engage the farmers that they are continuing. Give them some bulls. We had a small component where we got bulls from Naro. And we distributed bulls. One of my projects, we took 10 bulls to Chiringente, 5 bulls. And we took 5 bulls to Busana in Kayunga. They said these animals are going to disappear because where do you get a male? They are not there. You get us males. So I had to convince, it was Asareka. Asareka is Association for Strengthening Agriculture in East, Central and Southern Central Africa, Asareka. So they gave us some funds. We bought the bulls and distributed to these communities. So an act like that, you think the Nganda might stay around, but more needs to be done.
So this genomic database, where is it kept?
Very nice. So we don't have capacity here, unfortunately, because you need a very big computer space. We don't have computers which can manage this. So under that consortium, our collaborators from Netherlands are keeping this database. Obviously, where it is stored, it can be accessed from when we want some data, we can go in and pick, but we don't have it here. So one of the things we need to build about capacity about is this bioinformatics capacity. We need these heavy computers and databases where we can keep servers, where we can keep this information, and it can be accessible by other scientists and the producers, even farmers. Sometimes farmers want the information. I told you about Mr. Tayebwa. One of the things we should give back to him is this is part of the information from your animal. But it must be accessible for us to do that. So we need capacity in that area. And even train more scientists. We need more young people in this area of bioinformatics.
Sure, I was going to ask you that question,
Yes.
actually.
Yeah.
There is a time, I think, a few months ago. Early in the morning, I was walking to Makerere. I met students. They are very person. They are running. So I asked them, yes, where is the footage of our village? He said, what are you going to do? They said, you are going to do an exam. I said, you are going to do an exam and you don't know where you are going to do an exam from. So they said, you are students from Barai. I said, what are you coming to do here? it was actually a practical exam about cow genetics.
Okay.
So what's our capacity to train researchers in this field?
So I have to say we have limitation. So the issue is because of the capacity, equipment, mainly. What we have done is we have encouraged our young people to go and train where some of these facilities are. And actually, over the last 10 years, we've trained over 20. But this is the truth. When these guys go and train, they say, why should we come back to Uganda? Do you have the equipment? Do you have the facilities? Do you have the animals you're going to work on? So there is that problem. The feeling is that I'm trained in this area, should I just sit there? Okay. So they have decided to go and work for the different parts of the world of companies. So we need to build the infrastructure so that when the people train, they can do these things. So we need to have these farms, the government farms really revamped. The breeding stations, they need to be revamped so that when these guys come, they can do work and then it can develop and go to the next level. So, yes, the numbers are small, but the few we are training are running away. So we need to engage them. We need to provide funds for research. We need to find funds for research, funds for development. We need to invest in these people. That if somebody comes up with an innovation, there can be funded to grow that innovation. And that's what the rest of the world is doing. There's a young man who is in Sweden. He's doing evaluation. One way of doing an evaluation is you must have identification. Every animal must have a tag. We want a national identification system. We don't. So, if we can't identify our animals individually, if somebody sells an animal into the market and it disappears, however good it was, we know its father, we know its mother, but once it went in the market,
You can't trace it.
yes, you can't trace it because it is number 001, I have 001, he has 001. So it disappears. So we need a national identification and traceability system. We identify our animals, so it doesn't matter whether it's at Kugonza's farm or at Taiwa's farm or at Agawa's farm. Wherever it is, we can find it there and check its daughter, its son, its daughter, its son. Basically that. And so it all goes around capacity, empowering these government farms. Sometimes there is no medicine to even treat the animals, to spray them. These feed supplements are not there, or the land is being grabbed by somebody well connected. So the farm doesn't have any more land to grow pasture. So if we work around these things, then it's promising. I think it's promising.
Last from me, I know that you researchers are always doing a lot of research. That's how I came to know your name and find it in nature papers. What are you working on? What should we expect from you and your colleagues in the coming months?
So right now, we are keen on farm performance, on farm improvement. So we have these programs. 2 weeks ago, I was in Busia, and I was called there by Busia government because they had this agriculture show over 3 days. Yeah, Busia of Uganda, Samia Bugwe. So we are there from 28th to 30th. Actually, I went on 27th of May, and the idea was agriculture production, improvement in animal production, capacitating farmers. So we want to see better cows, better pigs, better chickens. So we're looking at vaccination. So we're working in this space. These are the things we're working on. How to improve productivity, more products, without necessarily substituting, without removing what we have and bringing on. How do we improve productivity? By working with a mix of these genetics. How do we make the best? This is what we're working on, to make sure that the genetics that we have can serve us. If they can't serve us, then at least we have in parallel. We have what is ours and what is introduced alongside, and keep them alongside. So I see going forward, as long as there are people interested in meat, in milk, in eggs,
those people are going to be there. As long as humans
Are there?
arrive, they'll be interested
food
in
is
it.
needed. So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
And so we are very grateful that our college is given this opportunity to do this work. We don't take it for granted. It's why we commit time. Because we work for government, we work for Ugandans. So the idea is to improve their lives. So this work we do is not for the sake of publishing, as I say. It is really for the sake of improving lives. And so it is quite nice when farmers call back, hello, I read this work that you've done and I've used it and it has helped me. I've been trying to do this. We attended the training and we have changed the way we are looking after our animals and now they are doing better. So that is very encouraging for us.
Another question actually. How you are doing this research? It's about cows and goats and chicken and it is, as you have said. We have more than 14 million cows in Uganda.
Yes.
More than 2.3 million households in Uganda which own cows. How do
1
you
million keeping the pigs.
Pigs, yeah.
About 7 million pigs, yes.
Yes, yeah. So how do you get this information, ordinary Uganda?
Yeah, so I've already said different things. So the agriculture shows, like we did in Busia. In Busia, we had over 5,000 people. And Ebola had just broken out. I asked those guys, are you really serious you want to do this show? They said, yes, we have prepared this for a long time. We are going to do all the biosecurity, we are going to do the sanitizers. So we are there with masks, but with over 5,000 people. It's unbelievable. In one training, in one sitting, I had 750 people. They were in 4 tents lined up. We had a loudspeaker, and somebody came and said, we can't hear you at the back. So these trainings have to continue. And then from there, we did radio talk shows. And somebody called from Kaveramaido. We're in Sorot town on radio, Voice of Teso. So we need to get better ways of passing the information. Trainings, radio talk shows, but also encourage our students when we talk to them, they also go to all the corners of Uganda, they can also pass the message. And then our farmers are now elite, they can read and write. So how the information is going to reach these 2-point-something million households that keep livestock? There are all these ways, radio, reading. We are going to continue doing our best to make sure that the information reaches them. I thought that was exciting, talking to those farmers in Busia. They came very early, 8 a.m. every day. Each of those 3 days we are there the whole day. It's amazing. Farmers are really encouraged. So if the farmers are interested, we shall be there to answer their questions, give them the information, and hope their lives become better. Hope they can take their children to school, they can have some of the animal products and feel good and be happy and serve humanity. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. It has been a pleasure talking to you, learning from you.
Very much humbled, sir.
And I hope my audience is going to learn from you a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving the audience. Makerere University is obviously here, is a public institution. Our mandate over the last 100 years plus has been to train. We don't just train students, we also train farmers, as I've said, and other people, but we also do research, which we have been talking about. So we train, we do research, and we do outreach, capacity building of Ugandans and other world citizens. We have had students from other countries. I've had students from Burundi, I've had students from Rwanda, students from Ghana, coming here to study for their degrees. So I'm very humbled. American students, they come here every year for the last 20 years. I work with them. So it's a good career to look back 20 years and you have been associated with a program that brings Americans every year to come and learn something from Uganda, So things like this have been very encouraging for me, and I think Uganda is that valuable to the world. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.